You're listening to The Grind. Well-caffeinated conversations with disc golfers who are passionate about improving their games and helping others to do the same. Welcome to episode 24 of The Grind, a disc golf podcast. I'm Josiah, and with me, my good buddy David and JC Kester, local pro and Colorado legend. Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me, guys. What's up, everybody?
Yeah, thanks for coming on. It's pretty fun. We had Aaron on a few weeks back, and now we have you on. And it's funny, Dave and I play a lot, but we don't play a lot of clubs and stuff. It's kind of hard with our schedules. So we know of you and we see you guys around, but it's fun to get to know you a little bit more. It's like we act like we know you because you're local, but I've had one conversation with you. So.
Oh, dude, just hit me up anytime you guys want to play around. I'm always down.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
There's one other guy with a fantastic beard that I often think is you, just because you guys both have great beards.
Spencer Hicks?
I think it might be Spencer, yeah.
We get confused often.
I get that with one of our buddies, Micah, who we play with. So anyway, we've got a great episode lined up for you this week. JC is going to tell us how to throw 500-foot thumbers. We are going to review the Discraft Force, and we're going to talk about, as you're building up different skills, how do you balance those? But first, as always, got to ask, and David, we'll start with you. What are you sipping on, and how was your disc golf week?
Oh, we're sipping on another coffee from KB Coffee Roasters out of Paris, France. Another one that I picked up on our trip over there. This one's a pretty unique one. It's from Santa Fe, Costa Rica. The farmer is Ivan Solis in the Terraza region. This is a unique coffee. This is a candy natural coffee. He's actually the one that invented the process. As far as I know, this is the one farm that is doing this process. This is similar to the anaerobic process as far as the fermentation process. It's different as far as it's not using yeast in the process. He's actually using a bacteria called, I think it's called Musto, M-O-S-T-O. I think that's how it's pronounced. And so he's just beginning to mess around with it, and it produces, he calls it a candy natural, and I get why. It has this, naturals typically are fruit and sweet, but this is, I mean, just when you smell it after you grind it, you know it's going to be wild. It's a very fruity cup. I think some of the tasting notes on the coffee are, let me pull it up real quick. Some of the tasting notes are tart mango, mixed red candies, and red sangria. It's hard for me to pull out any of those tasting notes, but I get this deep red fruitiness going on.
Yep. Yeah, no, I buy that for sure. I think there's, the little strawberry candies you sometimes get. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. They're kind of wrapped up to look like a strawberry with little seeds.
Yep.
That's kind of the feel I get. It is like very sweet, very fruity.
I warned JC ahead of time that this is going to be a pretty wild coffee.
This is like nothing I've ever tried before.
Yeah. Does it?
But I really like it.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's
good.
It's like this isn't coffee. This is like a combination of tea and coffee.
Yeah, I was a little worried when he was saying it was going to be sweet, and it is a little bit sweet, but not overly so. Like it's still a solid good coffee.
Everything is in the subtleties, but if you compare this to like a French roast, you are in totally different worlds, almost totally different beverages.
Yeah. Dude, this is so fruit punchy. There's something in there that reminds me of my childhood, and I can't remember what it is. Remember that I had this cup about a week and a half ago, and I was just really trying to wrap my mind around it. I still haven't figured it out, but it's some sort of like watermelon, like fruit punch. I don't know. Something going on.
I can't put a finger on it.
Yeah.
It's just delicious.
Yeah. I just make up things and hope David agrees.
Right. There you go.
Oh, man. How's your disc golf week, David?
It was a pretty good week. Got to play a little bit of Saltwash this week. I live right behind Saltwash Park there in Fruita, so me and actually one of my good buddies lives right across the street. Two of my good buddies that play, and so me and Micah are going back and playing often. I have a buddy Ryan back there too. But it's been a good week. I actually was throwing around the Force back there some and messed around with it for the review this week. But and I was working on my distance some in the field. Josiah and I just kind of made a goal. Our consistent backhands are around 350. I'd say around 350.
Yeah.
We've kind of made a goal to try to hit 450 this year. And
the 450 this off season.
And
do it.
So on record, the furthest I think that I've scanned myself throwing with my I always blank on the name of it.
Your rangefinder?
My rangefinder is 395, and I hate that I've gotten that far and I have it at 400, but I threw enough to where I was telling Josiah, I felt like I actually threw in a way that I had a good soreness afterwards. I feel like sometimes I throw and there's this painful soreness that I feel like, okay, I was doing something mechanically wrong to make my arm feel this way. This time it was when you feel like you just had a good workout and you feel like you are building up that arm strength. And so I walked away feeling good about my field practice this week. And so that was kind of the biggest takeaway and positive for me this week in my disc golf game.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, I told David, I was like, hey, after the next tournament for us, which is right now our last on our schedule, quote unquote, which is in August at Olathe, I was like, we're going to build backhand distance. And of course, David's like, I'm just going to start now. And I'm like, yeah, okay, that makes sense too.
Yeah.
I got to get ahead and beat
before
Josiah.
the tournament would be ideal.
Yeah.
So David and I, when he started getting good or better, and I was already like, okay, we went back and forth on our best score at Watson playing the 19 without the bonus holes. And so we went back and forth like 8 down, 9 down, 10 down, 11
I
down.
had 11 for a long time.
You had 11 for a long time. I think you got 12.
Yeah, I got 12.
No, I got 12. You got 13. I got 14.
Yeah.
So always in the shortest layouts with no wind, of course. but we haven't been able to break 14, and I think it's the thing that got David like pumped about disc golf this year was when I went 14 down in like December because he was like, "Crap, Josiah beat my best score."
Dude, that's a
and
solid round even on the short layout. That's really good.
Yeah, it was great, and I missed 2 20-footers, so I was like, "Oh, it could have been 16 down."
Yeah, at the time I was kind of in that season of feeling a little burnt out on playing a ton. And Josiah beat my score, and it just refueled the fire. Like, I'm going to take Josiah down.
So now David's doing the backhand distance thing for me. He's like, hey, if we're going to get there, I'm going to get there first. Yeah. Sorry,
dude, that's perfect. You guys are pushing each other. That's going to make you both better for sure.
Yeah.
It definitely has helped.
Josiah definitely knows how to fuel the inner competitive side of my nature.
I'm not nearly as competitive as David is, but whenever I feel like he's getting like burnt out, I'll be like, hey, David, I just banged a 70-footer today. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. It's not important. Like, you haven't hit one in weeks.
Nice.
I had a good disc golf week as well. We recorded actually Tuesday of this week and then Friday again, so I only got one round in since then. And I took a couple days off, and it was actually great because I think everything was feeling a little bit off. And I took a couple days off and then played 9 holes at Watson, and I was like, oh, the putt feels good, the backhand feels good, the short forehand feels good. So I don't know. Sometimes it feels good, and it's helpful for me to grind, try to get around it every day. And sometimes it's like, no, you just need to clear your body and mind of bad muscle memory that you're developing and move on.
Yeah, if you're playing your best, you want to keep throwing every day.
Yep.
But if you're having a little bit of a rest stretch, take up a little break.
That makes total sense. How was your disc golf week, JC?
I was pretty good. Well, aside from my friends beating me the last 2 days, which is unacceptable.
That hurts.
Yeah, I played with Donnie yesterday out at Riverbend, and he got me by 1. And then I played with Bryce today, and he got me by 3.
Ouch.
But we both birdied 15 long in Palisade today, which I have never seen that before. I've only birdied that hole a handful of times, and we both parked it, so that was really cool.
So that's what, 430-ish? Or more than that, 480?
It might be, yeah, around 450, something like that.
And it's like OB left and right. You have to throw over OB pretty much, and it narrows as it goes to where at the green you've got like, probably 30 feet, but a bunch of it has some little trees there. So that's a heck of a throw.
It was pretty sweet. Like, the only time I've ever birdied it before was with a sidearm roller, where I just had it OB the whole way and then rolled in right by the basket. Yeah, that was the only way I'd done it before. But today I did it with a thumber, and just
That's
a
sick.
cut thumber that skipped on its back. And I thought it aced, honestly, but it didn't.
That's pretty sick.
Yeah,
That was a good story.
I was confirming with JC earlier. I was like, you've thrown a thumber 500 feet before, because I kind of want to title the episode "How to Throw a 500-Foot Thumber." So he was like, yeah, cool. That works out well. Yeah, and maybe we can go straight into that. So I thought maybe you could tell us a little bit about how you developed your thumber, because it is what you're known for, and then a little bit of how somebody could work on their thumber, whether they are starting out and they can only get it 75 feet, or whether they're in that 350 range and they want to push to that kind of like everybody's in awe thumber land.
It's going to be tough. I did a clinic one time with Joe Revere, and I showed everyone I bombed a thumber out into the field, and he turned around and looked at everybody at the clinic and said, "You're never going to be able to do that." And I was like, come on, man, give him some hope.
The whole goal of this podcast is to have pros be like, hey, just do this easy 1, 2, 3 steps, and you'll be as good as me. And then we all, build ourselves up for it, find failure, then go back to the podcast for the next thing. So just pretend like...
Yeah, absolutely. So really,
How'd you develop it to start? Because it is unique. I mean, Colorado, a lot of people have it, but it is unique.
Well, I was a pitcher in baseball, and I threw very hard. I was able to chuck a baseball over the left field fence from home plate. And I just kind of taught. There wasn't like YouTube when I started playing. Or there was YouTube, but no one had disc golf clinics on there. So I just completely was self-taught. And I just picked up a disc and chucked it overhand one day. And then just slowly worked on it. Because it is similar to throwing a baseball or football, but there are some kind of unique parts of it. Like getting that snap. And really, the external rotation is the most important thing. So, like, as far as you can get your forearm back and wrist back and then really snap it forward, you're going to generate that spin and velocity. But you have to get it really high and also forward. So that can kind of be an awkward release that takes a lot of practice.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about getting that, like, really high 150-foot, like, touch, quote-unquote. For me, it doesn't feel like touch, but thumber to get me out of trouble. But anything beyond that, especially when I'm trying to snap forward, I feel like my arm just hates me. Like I think it's because I don't follow through.
Yeah, follow through is huge. You really, kind of like, I was actually experimenting with, how the outfielders in baseball will kind of do a roll, like after they throw from the outfield.
Yeah.
I was actually experimenting with that for a while to try to get less, less stress on the shoulder. Yeah. But really, I pretty much, as soon as I release, my hand's going all the way to the ground.
And when I've watched you throw, your backswing is like to your ankle.
Yes. Yeah, that's
I don't
also
think that people realize how big of a swing it is. I would think like I'm starting kind of like behind my head and then I'm just like ripping on it. But you're throwing, no, it's much more exterior rotation from basically your ankle all the way through to your other ankle.
Mm-hmm. And also a big part is starting with your palm down. Because if you try to reach all the way back to your ankle with your palm up, you're going to try to throw all your power from down there. So when you start with palm down, it's going to put your elbow in that perfect spot.
Oh, so you're rotating
and then
your
you snap
elbow.
It in.
You're rotating the disc and your elbow as you go.
Mm-hmm. Like I don't even think about it. I just start with my palm down and then it moves itself into the right spot.
Sorry, guys. I'm experimenting.
Did you kind of bring that concept from baseball with the... What do they call it?
Absolutely.
Snake fangs away from you.
Yep.
See, I played very poorly some quarterback in high school, and so I felt like
I was a star quarterback on his.
Yeah, I went to a high school where there was like 12 people in my graduating class. So you were like, oh, you're male. Oh, you probably could have been female too, and you can throw 35 yards.
No, you can pick up the football.
Yeah. I tried to play football my senior year because I was so small. I was one of the smallest kids in my class until like my junior year in high school. And then I finally got bigger, and I always was like a good football player, but I was just too small to play high school ball. And I was going to try to do the backup quarterback thing, and I was kicking field goals. And I dislocated my kneecap trying to kick a field goal during like summer camp. And that was like, okay, never mind. I'm just going to have surgery and get ready for baseball season.
I'm curious. You said you were a pitcher. What velocity, when you were playing in high school, what velocity were you throwing at typically?
I was probably averaging like low to mid 80s, but I would hit 90 occasionally.
That's incredible for a high school arm. That's awesome. Okay. That makes a lot of sense how you're throwing 500-foot thumbers.
Yeah.
No, it's 1, 2, 3. The exterior rotation, start from one ankle, go to the other ankle, 500-foot thumber. That's how it works.
That's exactly.
There's no natural
no problem. You'll be throwing them
required.
500 feet immediately. Don't listen to Joe.
I think I've told Josiah in the past. So I always had an above average arm. I played outfield in high school, and I always had an above average arm from the outfield. And I had a lot of pride in my arm, feeling like I can gun people out pretty well. And people definitely saw me as having a good arm. But then I went to a camp one day, and I probably threw like if I hit 80, like that was good for me. So 10 miles an hour slow from what you're throwing. But there was one guy at a camp at USC when it was just one summer, and I watched him gun a guy out from, we were all doing the drills from right field, gun a guy out to third base. And he was the one guy there that I felt like, okay, that's what it takes. That's the kind of arm it takes to if you want to play at an elite level. And that was the moment for me that I realized, like, I have a good arm, but I can't get that. I can't throw it that hard.
Is that like all your hopes and dreams are
As
smashed?
a child, that was like my hopes and dreams kind of going down for sure.
Yeah, so another quick tip with the overhands. If you notice you're getting a lot of wobble on your disc, That's because you're doing too much velocity and not enough spin, because it's a really fine line. Like I find out if I'm throwing 75% power, I'm actually throwing further than if I really power up on one.
That's good to know.
Yeah, and the release angle too, the more vertical you release it, like towards 12 o'clock, the slower it's going to pan. So you can release all the way down to 3 o'clock and have it flip almost instantly, which I use to get over like a real short thumber that goes over trees. But there's just so many different things you can do with the overhand. I mean, I throw like 7 different discs for it.
Wow.
So so let's say, what are those discs? And because you can throw any disc for it, but what do you typically look for? And then, how does that, because for a lot of people, overhand shots are like, they threw it once over a bush. What do you look for? You could have something that pans slowly or quickly, one that's going to have a wide pan or a really narrow flight. What kind of discs do you throw? What do you look for? And then how do you use those?
Well, I'll start with the longest distance first, and I use a TI FLX Nuke OS, which is insanely overstable. It's like tilt overstability, but 13 speed.
Yeah.
And if I release it vertical, it won't pan out. I have to release it like a 2 o'clock angle, and then it just does it. And it's so concave that it actually glides when it's upside down. So when it's doing that right to left pan, it's just getting a lot of distance.
Have you thrown Aerobi Epics before?
Yes.
Do you, obviously they're not a Discraft disc, but I don't think they're even made anymore. So I think you can give your honest opinion. Are they, because I've seen somebody throw like 400 plus on the overhand who didn't seem like they had a 400-foot overhand. Is it legit?
No. It's a circus shot. Like it's a kind of a mess around shot. I have a 145 gram Pro D Nuke SS.
Yep.
And I can do the same flight as an Epic, and I'll throw them 600 feet like that.
Oh,
but
okay.
It's just, I mean, it's not a golf shot. That's just, you want to show off more or less.
Hey, I mean,
which is important too.
Sorry, so didn't mean to interrupt there, but so the Nuke TI Flex Nuke OS. My guess is if anybody has any, you would love to trade with them.
Yes, if anybody has TI FLX Nuke OS, send them my way. I will hook you up.
Okay, so look up JC on Instagram or Facebook. Send him a message. And let him know. Let him know that you heard about it on the grind, and he will be super grateful. We'll send you a bag of coffee. I'll just call David out on that.
Thanks, guys.
Because I know they're hard to come by.
Yeah, I have like 3 of them, and I think they only made them for 2015 Ledgestone.
Dang.
So there you go. 2015 Ledgestone. I feel like there's a lot of prize discs in that collection.
So many.
So that's max distance, and that's like very, very slow pan.
Very slow pan, yeah.
Okay.
It's traveling fast, but panning slow.
And then what's like one step down from that?
One step down would be the ZFLX Machete.
Okay. Also, if people have those, or are they more common?
Those aren't common either. Like they were for a while. I had 30 of them at one point. I went to the factory and just grabbed a stack of them, and then I just thought they were going to keep making them forever, so I was just giving them away to everyone who threw overhands, and now I have like 3 of them left. But kind of a similar pan to the Nuke OS. But it's a little slower flight, so it doesn't get quite the distance. I think it's an 11 or a 12 speed, actually.
Okay.
But it's still a pretty quick disc, but not quite as fast as a Nuke OS.
Okay. And so those are both like slow panning, and then what's one step back from that?
One step back from that, I would say a Force or like an ESP Machete.
And that's just because it's going to have a quicker pan. Is that why it doesn't get quite as far?
Yep. And then one step down from that, like I throw like a Z Nuke. And those things flip pretty quick. Like I like to get the domey ones because they'll flip quicker, and they actually come down at an angle where they're not going to roll anywhere. They just land and stick. Yeah. Which is kind of one of the big problems with thumbers is you don't know where they're going to roll. But I've gotten to the point where I know exactly what direction every one of my discs is going to roll.
Yeah, I see. Neither David nor I have probably thrown a thumber in a tournament, but we play with a lot of people who do. It's kind of a Colorado thing.
Yeah, it's pretty contagious.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that every once in a while you'll see like the thumber that was perfect, and then it just was like, you know what, I'm going to go 50 feet, whichever direction I so chose, the disc that is. And you're like, oh man, that was so good. And then it wasn't. So I feel like makes sense. You have to learn that side of it.
Yeah. And then my shortest range thumber disc is a really beat in ESP crank that I actually got from Austin Bernal. This thing, if I throw it as hard as I can, it'll go like 280. Okay. It just flips instantly, just whoop, flips around and comes down backwards and sticks. And I actually use that one a lot. Like when the Frisco tournament last year that I won, Peak 1, I threw that off almost every tee because there's so many super short, tricky holes there. And I just
Yeah, David was a little jealous of a thumber on that course.
That's what I was on the car with Clay McGilvery. I think you mentioned that you know him, and it was the first time that I got to see somebody throw thumbers consistently.
He has a legit thumber
and
too.
it's amazing. He's got to be hitting like 450 at times with this thumber.
Yeah,
it's insane.
Definitely.
But it was so frustrating for me. That was the first time I played with somebody that is just, it felt like so far above my skill level that I kind of just watched. I feel like I got outside of my game and I didn't play very well, but I kind of enjoyed just watching what he was doing because it was something that I hadn't seen before. And it was frustrating. I'm having to work so hard to get to the basket, and he's just chucking this little over all the trees and landing and spiking by the basket. Like, how? How is this guy doing this? I want to figure this out.
I actually hurt my arm that tournament because I was throwing so many spike highs or forehands, which I never throw.
It's kind of an awkward motion.
Yeah, but it's just like that course is like, it wants you to throw high, and it doesn't want you to throw right hand backhand.
Yeah.
And so
It's a beautiful thing.
So JC, just as a bonus question, how do you feel about TDs wanting to outlaw overhand throws?
Fake news. So they did it. It was actually one of my buddies, Jay Redding. They had a tournament in Texas where it was a brand new course and the trees hadn't really grown in yet, and so he just didn't want people throwing thumbers in every hole, and it was like not a sanctioned event. But yeah, if they did that, I would be useless, like I was most of this year playing injured, trying to throw left-handed in tournaments.
Well, useless is a relative thing when you can throw a 500-foot sidearm and left hand and right hand backhand.
Fair, but I mean the thumber is definitely my best weapon.
Yeah,
I would really struggle without it.
Well, I feel like your circle 2 putting is also when you're on is kind of a thing of beauty. I feel like those 60 footers look awful short.
Yeah, when they're on. And I did nail a couple 60 footers today, which felt nice, but I also missed a couple 20 footers. It was a bit of a roller coaster.
It happens. We always make fun of Wilking because if he's at 45 feet, we're more confident than if he's at 20 feet.
That's fair. Dude, that dude is one of the smoothest throwers I've ever seen.
You and Aaron both.
Buttery smooth, man. I love watching him throw.
It's so good to play with him because you're like, I'm trying too hard on anything. You're like, if he can throw 500. The first time I saw him throw like 480, I was like, okay, now really try. Because it was, I don't remember, I think it was 9 Palisade long. And I think it was just like he threw just sub 500. He's like, no, I really tried. And I was like, it looked like you were trying to throw 100 feet.
That's totally true. I got a couple stories about Ryan Wilking if you guys want those real quick.
Let's do it.
All right. So we're traveling together to the memorial, and he grabs my car keys because he's going to go get his bag out, and then they were going to take a different car to their round because I was teeing off later in the day. Well, he ended up bringing my car keys with him.
Yep.
Oh.
And so my buddy Shad, who I was actually partners with last weekend at State Doubles, his dad drove like 100 miles an hour all the way back because we were staying an hour and a half away from the course.
Oh, no.
And he ended up getting there just in time. Andrew Herrera actually had to take a taxi or an Uber, which Ryan, he's such a nice guy. He paid for it. And he felt so bad.
Oh, man. So you guys were just about to miss your round.
Yep. Barely got there in time. But then he won my heart because I had one of those TI Flex Nuke OSs, and I threw it in the ground and it rolled into the canal and it's floating, and he dives into the water with his glasses on and almost loses his glasses. He didn't get the disc, but he won my heart forever. It's like, thanks, man.
Both of those things sound like Wilking for sure.
Right.
Oh man, yeah, it's been fun. It's been fun playing with him. He's been hanging out with us a bit and playing some rounds. And we, in our friend group, we have everything from like the guy who's just figuring it out and throwing like, 250 feet, and Wilking, and then everything in between. So it makes it a lot of fun for sure.
Yeah, because I know there's a lot of people that are worried about asking to play around with me, and it's like, if you are having fun and love disc golf, I would love to play with you. I don't care what your skill level is. If you're having a good time, that's what it's all about. Like,
yeah, that's awesome. I really appreciated when you were at NADGT Palisade, because I was like, this guy, he's not even allowed to play this tournament, and he's hanging out all day in the sun, just spotting for us AMs who are throwing 280 feet into the OB or into the grass. So I appreciate that for sure.
I was a little nervous because I got tagged in the back of the head with a Nuke OS the week before, and I was out there spotting, and a couple times I'm like, I can't really see him coming in. I don't want that to happen again.
You know that it was a nuke. It was probably your influence that person was throwing a Nuke OS. So in some ways, it was your fault.
It was my fault. Yeah.
I thought the other thing I thought we might be fun to talk through, and we've been talking about on the show back and forth a little bit, but you've got, like I said before, the thumber, the forehand, the lefty backhand, the righty backhand. You've got all these skills that you've developed over time. And I feel like so often some part of your game is clicking, so you lean on that. I'm saying you as in a general sense. And the other parts fall as you're working on that, and then you're trying to pick up the pieces. And so how do you manage like leaning into your strengths while still honing your skills in areas you're weak in and, you know, keeping up the skills you already have?
All right, so when I'm doing practice rounds or casual rounds, I have two different mindsets. The first mindset is just I'm practicing things I'm not good at. I'm trying new things, and I'll do those a couple times a week. And then I have what I call execution rounds, where I'm playing my best shot on every one of those holes. And I think that's a good way to do it, because that way you're still building up your new skills, but also honing in, or, you know, getting your normal skills better. So I think that's a good way to do it.
Sense. So you decide that like before the round what the goal is.
Like, am I going to mess around or I'm going to try to beat everybody?
Yeah, that makes total sense. I feel like often what happens for me is I have a hard time separating those two things. So I'll be thinking about like form changes mid throw when I'm trying to score well, which is just not.
Yeah, that's the worst thing you want to do.
Yeah. Brian Earhart was talking about something similar, about just how you need to like decide for yourself what you're working on that day. David's theory is try to birdie the first few holes. If he does, keep score, try to score well. If he bogeys, he's going to do the work on it round, which I like too. I mean, that seems like a smart way to play it.
I do kind of like that, but then I feel like if you get into a tournament and you have a couple bogeys early, it might have like a negative effect on you mentally.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And that's something that's happened recently in a tournament. It was like, I literally went into the second round thinking, okay, I'm going to come back and crush this. First two holes bogeyed. One of the holes was one that I always birdie, and so it got big time in my head.
Well, that's like last year when I was playing my best, I would have a couple bogeys, and I was just like, it doesn't matter. I'm going to get enough birdies to win.
Yeah.
And you just got to always have that mindset. Like, if you're making putts early, it's going to happen all day. If you're missing putts early, oh, well, I'm just saving the rest for the rest of the round. You just got to always keep that positive mindset and stay in the present.
It's crazy how much the mindset plays into the role of your round.
It's huge, almost better than your skills.
Macbeth just came out with a video talking about, I think he shot even, I think, on the first 9 at one of the rounds.
Yeah, this was, what's the new Major Champions Cup? In Georgia? That they just played.
Oh, the Hall of Fame Classic?
It used to be the Hall of Fame Classic.
And
now it's a
it.
major. I think it's Champions Cup.
Okay.
But then he ended up going -9 on the back 9, just got crazy hot. And just that, keeping that mindset as at any point in the round, you can get hot. It's just keeping that positive mindset.
Yeah, it's never too late to start birdieing.
Is there something for you that you feel like allows you, when you do have those bogeys early on, is there something for you that allows you to jump out of that mindset of, or not allowing that mindset to creep in of, I'm starting to really mess up my round?
I mean, well, I played 184 sanctioned events, I think, in my career. And so just going back, like, try to dwell on your successes all the time. You know, if you make a really good shot, smell the air, look around, you try to use all your senses to gather that in, because our minds want to remember the bad shots and we just can't let them.
Yep.
You know, you just got to remember, oh yeah, remember that one time I bogeyed the first 3 holes and then I ended up 12 down anyways. Mm-hmm. You know, that's what you got to be thinking about, and just, you know, it might not happen, but sometimes your attitude's the only thing you can be proud of in a round.
Yeah, that's one thing that I've loved watching Simon Lizotte. I feel like Lizotte's one of the best at just kind of laughing at when he does have a ridiculously bad shot. He just kind of laughs at himself. And then when he has an incredibly ridiculous, amazing shot, he laughs at himself. Like, well, that happened.
He is one of my favorite people to watch play. And honestly, I think he is the best player in the world right now.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's so cool watching, I think, the combination of injury and fatherhood and what it's done to him. Because I honestly think that there's a certain greater soberness to him. And I think it's partially because he can't quite throw 100% or he doesn't trust it anymore. So he's throwing these like ridiculously controlled 85%, which for Lizotte is still like 600 feet or whatever. And I honestly think fatherhood may have... we have a buddy, Ryan, who used to play a lot of disc golf and now he fishes, so he's dead to us. But he always calls it dad strength. Like, oh, if you have a kid, you're going to have dad strength. And so my theory is Lizotte has just picked it up by 5 or 10% with that dad strength.
That, and I mean, he honestly, like he would say it in interviews, he didn't care about winning. He wanted to go out there and show off and have fun.
Yeah.
And now he has just got this, he's playing smart golf.
Yeah.
And you can just see it in his face. I remember watching the last tournament and that smile. It was that same smile, but there was this confidence behind it where it's like, I'm having a good time, but I also know I'm going to win. And it made me really happy to see him.
Well, it's crazy to me that this season it's like Girthy and Lizotte have been the two most consistent players. And if you think about those guys across their careers, you'd say, oh yeah, they show up a few tournaments a year and just like light it up for 3 rounds and then they fall apart a little bit at the last round. And it's like, no, these guys are the most consistent players. And they're fun to watch because of their like just wild skill sets.
Mm-hmm. It's been a great year to watch disc golf because, I mean, for, I don't know, a while, like, you know, it was Macbeth and Wysocki and Eagle.
Yep.
Like they were winning every event. And now like the second tier players are catching up to them and you never know who's going to win any tournament. And it makes it a lot of fun.
Yeah. FPO as well. Like I feel like
Definitely.
FPO used to be pretty much Paige and Cat. And then the random dark horse person, when they decided not to make any putts, then maybe somebody else would show up. And then when the Euros were in town, you know, maybe one of them would go off. And now it's like, you really have no idea. It could be Paige. It should be Paige a lot of times, but it could be, you know, pretty much any of them. So I feel like the field has gotten deeper. And I think the top players are not playing their best right now, which is you want them to play their best. But I think that there is this like, it's good for them to be challenged. I know that Macbeth times when he was on his like crazy streak was like, I want to get better, and the only way I'm going to get better is if you guys get better. So I'm going to show off in some ways to try to, like in terms of what I'm doing, to try to get you guys to level up. I feel like that is the level of like champion where you're like, it's not just about me anymore. It's also about, I want it to be harder. And I think that's Macbeth for you. I don't know if I'm ever there.
It's just wild how much more serious all the tour players are taking it.
Yeah.
I mean, even just 10, 12 years ago, most of the guys were on tour to party. Now these guys they're there to win. They're there to make money. They're there to, you know, train 24/7. And it's like a whole different mindset. I kind of like that disc golf's going in that direction. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. I mean, I think the fact that we as like low 900 rated players have a following of people who are in similar boats, maybe a little better, maybe a little worse, that are obsessed with getting better at disc golf, I think says a lot. Because if we're doing it and we are 100 points worse rating than the touring pros, like, I mean, people are gonna be pushing. People are gonna, if you don't keep it up, some 1,000 rated 19-year-old is gonna show up and play some 10-50 rounds.
You mean 16-year-old
or 16-year-old? That makes me a little sad. I'm all about Gannon Burr, but there's a certain level I'm like, you know, as a 33-year-old man, sometimes I'm like, you know what? I'd still do it. I don't think I want to go pro. I'm not going to go on tour, but I could still be like a really great local pro. And then you see the 16-year-olds and you're like, dang it.
Yeah. So 2 things. First, they need to have a 35 and over division because I'm tired of competing with these young kids. And second, I think disc golf should be like alcohol or tobacco. Like once you're 21, you can start playing. Like we can't have these kids out here whooping on everybody. It's not fair.
That's about when I started. So
same.
So yeah, I mean that. Cool. Well, we'll just email the PDGA, let them know.
Yeah, I'm sure no one will have a problem with that.
Oh man, you want to get into a disc review?
Let's do it.
So we have the Discraft Force, which is a 12-speed, 5-glide, 0-turn, and 3-fade distance driver. And I had never thrown a Force, but I'd heard good things. Thought we could kind of go through and talk about it. David and I will talk through it first, and then we'll turn to you because you obviously have the expertise. We've just been throwing them for a couple weeks now. But David, what did you think about the Force?
Well, you know, I just expected to go out and start throwing 500 feet with the Force because, you know, they all throw 500
And you only got
feet.
to 485.
The pros, and I'm like, no. But the Force, I feel like, as far as it reminds me the most, I was telling JC before the show, it reminds me of a PD2. And I've also thrown a Destroyer some, kind of in between. But it definitely leans for me a little bit more towards the PD2. Definitely very overstable. Definitely a little bit more higher speed than with my arm speed. My backhand, I think I could maybe get it out to 300 before it's crashing crazy hard, and it never does anything it's supposed to do. And
Or it does exactly what it's supposed
Well,
to.
it's unfair. We throw at higher elevations. These discs are designed to be thrown at sea level. So
for sure. But then my forehand, it reminded me of the PD2 because I love the PD2 and the Destroyer. I threw Sakibot Destroyer for a while that kind of had, I love the Sakibot because it had kind of a dominess to it that gave it a little bit more glide, so I can put it on these hyzers, and I felt like I can get it gliding for a decent ways. But this reminded me more of the PD2 that it gets it on that hyzer, and it's really going to get low and skip really quick. And really for me, this is a disc that maybe I'm putting out about 340 on a forehand. On a good day. I definitely like, for me, I throw a lot of race. The race I love because I can actually get it to turn and do a little bit more of what it's supposed to do for me and have a good finish. But yeah, I think it looks like a great disc. I'm sure it's a fantastic disc if you have the arm speed, but for me, I definitely was having some struggle with it.
But there is, what I'd say is very similar. I threw it, my best throws with it were terrible nose up, chop ante forehands. It just went forever, like for how overstable it was. I think because the speed and the glide, I would be like, oh man, I didn't throw that far because the flight just looked terrible. And then I'd walk down and I'd be like, oh, that got over 300 feet. Cool. And that, given the flight, I would have expected like 250. I started out throwing it flat forehands and little ante backhands, and then I moved to like ante forehands and then chop ante forehands because I was like, this thing is a meat hook. It's fast, but it wants to, for the right hand forehand, it wants to get right and it wants to get down. I'm curious, JC, what they are like once they beat in, because it kind of felt like maybe once you really beat one in, it would be a bomber, even at a lower arm speed, but you'd have to really work it in.
Yeah, you got to beat them in for quite a while, but they do get to the point where they're a lot more workable.
Yeah, I liked it. I think it's it's a very much a utility disc for my arm speed and our elevation, and there's a lot of days that we have those 25-mile-an-hour winds with 35 gusts, and I think then it would be one that I would really like because you could just trust it. Still, for me on a forehand ante, I could throw my normal forehand flex shot and know that it's not going to just turn over and be gone. Like, it's going to have integrity. But I think it would be one, and we can get into in the rating, but I think it would be one that would probably go in and out of my bag because there's a lot of days when it's 5-mile-an-hour wind that I think that I would never pull it out because I think I could get similar lines with a slower disc that I'd feel like I'd have more control. Obviously, I'm not throwing 500 feet on the thumber and forehand, so maybe we can turn it to you. And hey, you've got that arm speed. Some of our listeners probably have that arm speed. What do you use it for? We talked a little bit about the thumbers earlier.
Yeah, for me, I use it for literally every shot I throw. I throw righty backhands, lefty backhands with it. I'll throw the nuke if I'm trying to really get a distance forehand out, but if I need more controlled, like 450 distance, it's the Force. I use it for thumbers. I use it for tomahawks. I use it for sidearm rollers. The furthest throw I've ever had was with a Force.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was at a tournament in Vegas at the Wild Horse, and I threw a sidearm roller with it, and it just stayed at a slight cut angle the whole way, and it went, 700 feet. It was ridiculous.
That's ridiculous. With that sidearm roller, how long was it in the air? How many of those feet?
Probably 200 feet in the air.
And then 500 feet.
Yeah.
That's wild.
That's absolutely wild.
On those ball golf fairways, man.
Yeah,
The grass is so hard and short. It just kept going. It was fantastic.
That's awesome. I'm gonna do a little bit of a sidebar here, but we talked a ton thumbers, and I meant to bring this up, but you talked tomahawks as well. Obviously they pan differently, and it seems like thumbers get more distance. Can you talk about when you would pick a tomahawk over a thumber and some of the differences there?
For the most part, I'll throw a thumber if I can. Tomahawks, it's a lot harder to manipulate the angle because you kind of got to throw it like a screwball if you want it to pan right. So a lot of people just throw them straight vertical. Yep. And then you have to have a pretty flippy disc to get it to actually do its thing. Yeah,
I think a lot of times I have the world of the tomahawk didn't turn or it didn't pan at all. And so I basically threw an overhand roller. Or the worst thing is when you have crosswind and that happens, and then you basically threw something that went, I don't know. Maybe it went 100 feet left into the river on hole 17 at Watson. I don't know. Maybe that happened one time.
Yeah, they're definitely trickier. I will use them if I have to start it right and cut back left.
Yeah.
But they've been less and less all the time because I have the Z Flex Machete and the TI Flex Nuke OS that just cut so hard right to left. And if I release those kind of vertical with a little bit of spin, I can get them to fly almost like a backhand hyzer.
They never fully pan around, so you can kind of you skip the second half of the flight. Is that how that works?
More or less. Or they cut in and then land on their back.
Yep. Yep. So instead of having it land on or fly on its back and then finish right, you kind of do the opposite. It just stays to the back. Yep.
Yeah, I call it a cut thumber.
Cool. Well, back to the Force. I meant to ask that question earlier, and
no worries.
I'm terrible at tomahawks and thumbers, but tomahawks to me just feel trickier unless I'm trying to throw them like 100 feet and then with something flippy. So that makes total sense.
Yeah, there's some guys though. This guy Cedar Morgan from California, and he throws tomahawks with ZFLX machetes, and I have no idea how he does it, but he throws them like 450. Like the dude absolutely bombs.
It seems like almost like a different shoulder.
I don't even
movement.
It's so awkward to have to release at that angle and that hard. Like that's why I like thumbers, because it's a lot simpler angle.
Yeah, I kind of want to mess more with like the thumber that goes forward more, because I've seen people throw those on some tight wooded holes before, and you're like, oh, that's a totally different line than I could throw with any other shot.
Yeah, Ryan Sparks at Delta, I think it was hole 4 or 5, the first one in the trees there, or the second one in the trees.
Yep.
He threw a short little straight thumber that just absolutely parked the hole. And that was the first time I've seen that shot.
Well, and the nice thing about throwing, overhand shots through the woods is they're coming in at almost a vertical angle, so you don't have as much area of the disc to hit a tree, so you're more likely to cut through.
Yeah, that makes total sense. The Force.
Yeah. So it's been one of my favorite discs for a really long time. It's just it's very overstable. I can throw it at a slight ante at max power, and I know it's going to come back. I can throw it at a little bit of hyzer and just kind of do a nice gentle fade the whole way. Man, it's one of my favorite discs.
What plastics do you throw for the Force?
Usually the Spanish plastic or ESP for.
And do you bag a few and kind of work them, like layer them, or how does that work for you?
I usually just have one Force in my bag.
Okay.
Because if it's a longer distance hole, I throw the nuke. But the Force is just so much more controllable. It's just so consistent, and I know exactly where it's going to go.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Anything else for you guys on the Force? Fast, overstable, little bit of glide.
Excellent wind disc.
Yeah.
For any arm speed.
Yeah, it's funny. We were dealing with so much wind until the last couple of weeks, and then it's been kind of calm when we were testing the Force. So I was honestly a little sad because, when you get like an understable mid and then it's like, swirly 30-mile-an-hour winds, you're like, I don't have any idea what this is doing on the disc review. And then we get the Force, and finally the wind slowed down a little bit.
Two of the weeks that we were testing some putters, it was pretty heavy wind weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's still been windy at times, but not the consistent wind. Cool. We can hop into a rating. We will each rate it 1 to 5, and then we'll sum our scores to 10. And how that will work is David and I will only count as half because we're not pros. We haven't thrown the disc enough. So 1 is it's not that great of a disc. 2 is it's an okay disc, but there's better options out there. 3 is it's a good disc, but it doesn't stand out. 4 is it's fantastic, but it's not going to go in my bag. And 5 is it's going in the bag. So David, what's your rating?
I'm going to go 4 here. I think primarily because I've always had either a destroyer or a PD2 in my bag, primarily for something that can be predictable when I can't throw. And I do have my Halo Wraith in my bag, which is usually my go-to when it gets really windy. But when I'm anywhere near water, I don't want to throw my Halo Wraith and lose it in the water. That's typically when I'm going to my destroyer or the PD2 to fight the headwinds. And if I'm wanting kind of a long pushing hyzer, one hole that I think about at Delta is hole 17 that I kind of go out over the water and you want that long pushy hyzer. And again, I like that it's a stock disc and I'm not going to lose it. And so I could see this ending up in my bag at some point as filling that little niche in my bag. I guess it's not something for me as an amateur that I feel like this is my go-to disc. But it's something that I feel like can be, I guess it would be in that utility category, I guess, as far as there's certain times that I would use it. So yeah, I give it a 4.
I was going to give it a 3.5, but the math is daunting. So I'm going to give it a 4.
Yeah, you got to round up.
I'm going to give it a 4. I think that this is, for me, a very specific disc that would come in and out of the bag. But I don't really have anything quite like this just on my shelf waiting to go into the bag in case there's that really windy day. And I think I usually will put in like a Halo Wraith or Castoplast Rask, which I don't know if you've ever seen one of those, but it's like a double rim. It's a 13-speed driver, but the outer rim is a 9-speed, and then it's got a small inner rim. It's super weird.
Whoa.
You should check it out. But this actually has more stability on the front end than the Rask, which I think the Rask I thought was going to be a great headwind disc, but it's actually very speed stable is what one of my buddies would call it. But at high speeds, it's actually kind of understable until the end. This thing looks like, oh no, it can handle anything. So definitely an interesting disc, one that won't go in my bag this week, but may keep it on the shelf or keep one on the shelf and put it in the bag if needed. JC, I know you're going to give it a 1, but let's get your rating anyway.
Yeah, I never do not have a Force in the bag. That's a solid 5 for me.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Cool. So that is a 9 out of 10, which is a great score for a great disc. And if you guys want to support the podcast, you can order these from 1010discs.com and let them know the grind send you by using the coupon code TheGrind5. But I think, JC, you also, Big Cat Disc, is that right?
Yeah, bigcatdiscgolf.com.
And you've got a code too, right?
I do, with the promo code ThumbFar, and I believe it gives you 12% off.
And it also gives you 12% further distance on your thumbers and forehands.
Yes. That's a guarantee.
Where the Grind 5 only gives you 5% more distance on your backhands and forehands. So kind of up to you on which one you want to use. But we really appreciate you joining the show. And if you guys want to support JC, he dominates the Colorado circuit. And I've actually ordered from Big Cat before and was super stoked. I got some ridiculously swirly Hades, which is like my style of 12-speed disc. They are just the most ridiculously beautiful discs I've ever bought. And then I was afraid to throw them. You know how that goes.
Right, that's fair. Have you guys thrown the Thrasher?
We have not. It's on my list.
It is fantastic.
Man,
like I sell out of them immediately because it's such a good distance disc at this elevation.
Yeah,
it's like
sense.
Similar stability to a Hades, but I feel like it's more controllable.
Okay,
maybe a little more glide.
Okay, well that's a good sales pitch because I think some of my furthest backhands have been with the Hades. So, well, that's the majority of our podcast. But JC, I thought just for fun, you've played a lot of courses, 184 sanctioned events or something like that.
Something like that. I don't know the exact number, but something there.
Let's give 2, your favorite Colorado course and your favorite course outside of Colorado you've ever played.
All right, so my favorite Colorado course is Bailey, where they had the match play championships.
Okay.
The thumber is so effective there. It's like all the holes are like max distant thumber range for me, and so I've won a couple tournaments there, so I really like that course. With a close second being Winter Park.
Okay.
It's on the ski mountain. You ride the lift up. You take the alpine slide down. There's a million different variety of shots. Like even I throw like 3 backhands on that course, which is unheard of. And a huge downhill hole that's really fun. Both courses are awesome. Outside the state, I'm gonna go Pandaray in New Mexico.
Okay,
it's like 8,000 feet on a private ball golf course.
Okay, that is Wilking's favorite course as well.
That makes sense. It actually burnt down.
That's what
this year. So
that's super sad.
Yeah, so I think it's gone forever. But it was like the most wooded golf course you can imagine, and then they just there's this one double dogleg par 5, and we play from the same tee box as the golfers, and it's a par 5 for us too. And I don't think I've ever shot under par on the course. It whoops me every time, but I absolutely love it.
All right, since that one burned down, give us number 2 that is still isn't actively burning or hasn't burned down recently.
I'm going to go with De La Viega.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah, that course is great. I only played it at Worlds in 2011. That was the last time I've been there, but holy cow, is it fun.
It looks like one of those courses that is fun and like ridiculously frustrating or amusing depending on your attitude when you start the round.
Yeah, you can take some bad rolls off those roots and stuff. There's no question.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we really appreciate you stopping by and joining the show. For everybody listening, you can join our Patreon, and we had JC on Patreon.
Do it.
You can join it at patreon.com/thegrinddg. We had JC on earlier. We talked a lot about leveling up your game, and so you can do that in addition to getting 12% further on your thumber and forehand. So it's a good deal. But as always, This week, whether it's coffee or disc golf, don't forget to enjoy the grind.